Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Oh, together fight the foe, foe, foe. Welcome, everybody, to the Streakers Island podcast. You will get the rest of that sing-along in our CFL pregame show today around 7:45, 8 o'clock. So stay locked in. But, of course, it is I, Jacob Moore, the self-proclaimed sports analyst, and I have to wear my Argo gear because, man, I'm just excited for some Canadian football back. And, of course, though, I got to introduce the rest of the crew. Lane is joining us via some pre-recorded videos as he is being a wonderful roommate and is driving his roommate to a secret location that we will not reveal. But he is driving him at around 4 a.m. So we will hear from Lane Dashing Dashko in a bit. But, of course, we have Chazzy, number 5.55. The updates are coming. And we have Mr. More for your money.
Woo! There we go.
Yeah, here we go.
There we go.
But we got an action-packed show tonight, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to talk about game 1 of the NHL playoffs, and we had a post-game show about that as well for about 45 minutes up on our Facebook and YouTube, so make sure you fly over there after this show because a lot of good stuff in there. We're going to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays, and they are on a roll, winning 6 of the last 7. What seems to be working?
98 wins, baby.
No. The CFL Week 1 is finally here, but is it the right games to start the year? We're going to talk about that. NBA playoffs are coming up, and the they're here. The finals are here. And the Toronto Raptors are maybe looking to make a splash bigger than the NBA playoffs themselves. Will it happen? But we're going to talk about it anyways. But let's dive off the island.
There's a lot of blue on the island today here, boys.
Yes.
Well, we all have blue eyes. We've said that before.
That is true.
Except Lane. Does he have blue eyes? Oh, he does.
You know what it is, right? When you're sitting on an island, what do you think of? Blue water. The blue wave, if you will.
Blue skies.
Blue skies are blue. Red roses too. My Louis Armstrong impression. But let's get into game 1 of the NHL playoffs. And
playoffs.
I don't think you could have started these playoffs in a better way.
No.
Back and forth action.
Entertained, yep.
Very entertaining, and it was just a really solid game.
Like we said earlier, is the two best teams we just saw.
It was. Like, it really did. You're definitely seeing it. These are the two best teams in the NHL. Do we like the way we got to the two best teams in the NHL? That's another conversation because I still hate this playoff format. And I've had many viewers agree with me, and you'd be wise to agree. But at the end of the day, we saw great goaltending. We saw physicality. We saw star players being star players. We saw role guys looking like star players. Kasperi Kapanen in overtime, like, hello, Connor McDavid, when he just splits the D and hits the post. But, oh, man. Like,
well, if you're a young hockey fan right now and you just see the determination on this Edmonton Oilers team and just the physicality that Florida brings as a team as well, like, there's lots of lessons to be learned out of this series.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about Florida's physicality. Edmonton matched the physicality.
They did.
And I think they elevated it tonight.
Yeah.
9 hits. Yeah.
Evander Kane is just a wrecking ball. That's the thing. Both Edmonton and Florida should be putting the rest of the NHL on blast on what you need to make to the Cup Finals.
Right.
All this high-end skill, high-end talent, you need some of it, but don't oversaturate it because you need role guys, you need physical players, you need goaltending.
Well, look at Kapanen with 5 hits tonight. Kapanen with 5 hits.
Man. Kasperi Kapanen, I think there are a lot of temes thinking that they maybe should have kept him, like Pittsburgh and Toronto, who are desperately looking for secondary options.
St. Louis.
Guys got 5 points in 8 games in these playoffs. You look at guys like him, you look at Connor Brown. I thought Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had a really good game again tonight. And I think for the Panthers, I don't know if you guys will agree with me or not. And Dan, I know he's your type of player. I think Matthew Tkachuk has just been flat.
I agree 100%. I think he has been flat. Yeah, he's got 18 points in 16 games, which is great. But it's like you said, Jay, you don't pay Tkachuk to get the points, right? You pay him to flip the game around. You pay him to raffle some flowers, to play physical, to drop the gloves, to You know, the thing is, if you're not talking about Tkachuk, that's not a good thing. There are some players, like a defenseman, if you're not talking about a sixth defenseman, for probably playing a really good game. But if you're not talking about Matthew Tkachuk, he is not playing a good game. So I think he really has to step it up. You saw him talking with Evander Kane on the bench, and, you know, that's good for him. Yeah, something like that. You know, that's yap. I mean, that's a good start, but you need him to, like, do something crazy. And that's what I said in our post-game show. I got called out for it from a viewer, but I still think I'm right here. I'm Florida. I'm not cleaning up my game at all. I'm getting dirty. I'm getting more physical. I'm getting scrappy. I'm getting emotional. I'm getting vocal. And I'm playing Florida's game. Because when Florida had their game in the second period, when Skinner allowed those couple weak goals, and
they weren't weak goals.
Florida looked very good.
They weren't weak goals, and this brings into the conversation again about the goalie interference. And Dan, I know you have in the notes no, but then why was that goalie interference last month and not goalie interference this month?
I don't have a scientific answer for you. I really don't. Even on Mr. Keltway, I can't say, oh, because you stood here this many 7 meters versus this many centimeters. I don't have an answer. And as an Edmonton fan, I wish that it wasn't goalie interference. But when I saw it live, I remember saying to you, Jane, when we were watching it live, I'm like, I think this goal is going to count. And that's just my gut feeling. My gut feeling was Sam Bennett, and I think Florida almost practices playing on that edge of embarrassing and making things look worse than they are and playing a little dirty and scrappy. And Bennett, I mean, you got to argue he's one of the best players in these whole playoffs. I mean, the fact that it was Bennett and he kind of just got nudged in a little, I'm like, I don't know. I think it's going to count, considering if it did count. And I think, regardless if it count or didn't count, yeah, he was kind of a front of Skinner, but it was kind of a weak shot.
It's not a weak goal. You can't blame the goaltender when they can't even get to where the puck is.
He was right there.
No, he wasn't.
It just squished through him.
It didn't even go near him because it went through Sam Bennett, who was on top of him.
Not really. Bro.
At the end of the day, whether it's a goal or not, but honestly, too, who the hell cares? At the end of the day, Edmonton got the job done. I just want consistency with the calls. But at the end of the day, the Oilers were not rattled. And Chazzy,
well, you can't always just get what you want, Jacob.
Okay, Mr. Penn. But Chazzy, you talked about how you think this Oiler team just kind of looks determined. And I brought up, too, on our post-game show that I felt ever since they had all those come-from-behind wins against the LA Kings, that this Edmonton team realistically feels they can defeat any team in any given moment. Like, Chazzy, if you saw Edmonton down 6-1 with 10 minutes left, I think the Oilers on the bench still look like they can probably come back in a game.
I think they almost did it against LA. Weren't they down, 3 or 4 in that third period? In the game 1 or 2?
Yeah, they were game 1. They were down 4-1 with 6 minutes left,
and then they lost 5-4.
Yeah, and they actually tied.
They lost a few. Is that the one that they lost seconds later?
Yes, they tied it up. Connor McDavid celebrated like he won the Stanley Cup, and that moment on, it's like a switch flick to Edmonton. Even though they lost game 2 in that series, they played so much better. And ever since that, Edmonton has not really slowed down. I would argue.
No,
I can maybe only count 5 periods this whole playoffs. The Oilers have been outplayed. Like, this team is just dominating. And this is no disrespect to Florida. I still think this is a series. Friend of the program, Dan Gray, said that's going to be a very long series.
I agree with him.
I don't know yet. I kind of want to wait to see what happens in game 2 to see how Florida responds from this one, because the Florida guys, in my opinion, just look tired.
Let's hope it's a long series. It's entertaining.
It is. Well, it's like the yo-yo. They got to get going again. Like, I just felt we talked about it earlier, this 5 or 6 day layoff, and these teams carried the momentum. Look what Florida did right after beating Toronto. They carried the momentum and crushed Carolina.
And I think Edmonton more carried the momentum. But if
they just seem more motivated tonight to keep going. So
they did. But I think if you're Edmonton, though, I think in practice you're working on face-offs for at least an hour, because you got slaughtered in the face-off circle, and that is a problem. I think
You're
you're very
there
lucky
right
that Stuart Skinner bailed you out on quite a few situations here.
He did, yep.
And actually, if you're Florida, I'm going to say this too. What happened to the forecheck? I don't feel they were forechecking as hard against Edmonton as they were against Toronto. Like, why weren't defensemen jumping into the play and trying to create more pressure? Okay, I get it. In overtime, they did that in the penalty kill and to bit them in the butt. However, I think that's how Florida plays, right? I think if you're the Florida Panthers, you have to be more aggressive than what you were in this game. And I still think Matthew Tkachuk, I said this in our live show, I'm saying it now. For me, Matthew Tkachuk is moving down to that third line because I don't think he's earned the second line minutes. I don't think he has played that effective. I know Moore and Chazzy, you've talked about either moving Marchand to that second line with Tkachuk and Bennett to make a pest line or moving Tkachuk to the top line. But I have a hard time moving a guy up in my lineup who I feel is not playing as well as he should be.
He is still playing.
Though, Verhagen on that top line.
Yeah, 100%. I think Verhagen is the most underrated player on this Panthers team. I really do. He's a one player. Everyone talks about Ekblad. Everyone talks about Barkov, as we said. Everyone talks about Reinhardt's 50 goals a couple years ago, and Brad Marchand being the big hero, and Matthew Tkachuk being the guy everyone hates. Well, Verhagen very quietly does very well every playoffs with game-winning goals and all that. And I think Regis, I like the guy, but he's a third line player at best. He has been kind of weak this playoffs of 10 assists, mind you, but is he getting 10 assists because he's good, or is he getting 10 assists because he's playing with Barkov and Reinhardt all night, right? He only has one goal. I would put him down on the third line, and I would put Verhagen on the top line and build an ultimate best line with Marchand, Tkachuk, and Bennett. That line would be like a Hall of Fame line. It would be the most pesky line we have seen in about 25 years since before the 04 NHL lockout. We're talking back 03 hockey when Darcy Tucker would go and get things going. That's what we're talking here. That's how big of a line that would be. And we're saying Florida doesn't mess up the lines a little because they looked a little off tonight, right? And you mentioned their forechecking, Jacob. I think it comes down to speed. I think Edmonton has so much more speed versus the teams that Florida played in the East.
I don't know about that. I don't know if Edmonton has that much more speed than Toronto. I think Toronto was a pretty fast lineup.
Toronto's not. Really think Captain
Edmonton's way fast.
Come on, bro.
Edmonton, McDavid, and Draisaitl are, but I would argue like Bobby McMahon is a hell of a skater. You have guys like Max Domi, who's a very good skater. You have Morgan Riley on the back end, who's a great skater. I think, McDavid and Draisaitl, sure.
I mean, top guns.
What they did a good job. What Florida did against Carolina as well, and Carolina's a fast team. They pressured. Yeah. And I think they pressured the defense a lot more than they pressured Edmonton's defense. And I think tonight you did see Florida's defense looked a lot more human than I think they should have. But There's an interesting quote here from Kasperi Kapanen after the game.
Ooh,
and I'm reading it off my cellular device where you guys like, no, your head's not looking at the camera. Because I'm always telling these guys they need to look at the camera.
You know what? You should be looking at your cellular device? For Streakers app. That's why I downloaded people on your cellular device.
But back to Kasperi Kapanen. They asked him about watching Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and he said, I don't really have words for you guys. I think that's just showing for Kapanen and what a lot of us are seeing. These are the two best players in the league. Funny thing is, they just consistently this game won shifts, right?
Yeah.
And Draisaitl 2 goals, McDavid 2 assists. Give Kapanen credit too, 2 assists tonight. Like, Edmonton, their top guys and their depth guys made big differences. However, I thought Corey Perry looked old tonight. I still think he's on my top line going forward, but I kind of like the way they were flipping Perry and Brown on and off so they could keep getting Leon Draisaitl and McDavid all of the minutes they could. Because Corey Perry in the first period was kind of rough. He took 2 really stupid penalties.
Every time he touched the ice, he went to the box.
Yeah, it was a rough night for Corey Perry. The end of the day,
who assisted the overtime game-winning goal?
Actually, he didn't.
He got the second assist.
No, he didn't.
Oh, well. Let's just pretend he did. Because he was still involved in the play.
He was involved in the play, but I don't believe he got an assist on that goal.
You know what I think is really funny here? We hear it from Kaskari. We heard it from Kaskari Kapanen tonight. We've heard it from Connor Brown and Zach Hyman in the past. And we heard it from other former Maple Leafs. Everyone compares Captain Underpants and Mitch Marner to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, right? Because they're the best dynamic duo in the league, blah, blah, blah. However, players that have played with those two players then go play with McDavid and Draisaitl. As you said, they never seen anyone play as good as McDavid and Draisaitl. So let's take that as you will. The other thing I found very interesting is when they interviewed Draisaitl at the end of the game, guess what was underneath his helmet? Sweaty, wet hair. What was under Mitch Marner's helmet in Game 7? Bone dry hair. And that's the difference between a winner and a loser. Mike, drop.
Now, it's interesting here, boys. I don't know if you've seen Paul Maurice is already kind of playing a little bit of mind games. And they asked Paul Maurice about the overtime penalty that Nosek took. And he said, you remind him after the game being down 0-2 to Toronto. We're fine.
Oh,
he's kind of already saying, like, look, stop the presses. Meanwhile, you have, and again, I'm scrolling up and down because I just have some quotes here on my phone. You have Chris Knobloch, who's talking more about how the break impacted the Oilers, saying it was a tough one last year, but this year we had 2 long breaks after series. It's just helped a lot. And that's where he's speaking about the health of the Oilers, where the Oilers feel that they're a lot healthier than they were last year, and they're feeling really confident. However, the Florida Panthers don't seem nervous whatsoever being down 1-0 in this series.
Well, you said it earlier. Dan Gray wasn't all that excited about one win. So it's going to be a long series.
I think so too. Yeah.
I'd be curious though to ask Dan, and I'm not going to message him at 1:52 in the morning, even though in Alberta it's only about midnight. But
he's 2 hours behind us. It's fine. Send him a message.
You wonder how Oilers fans are feeling about Stuart Skinner right now. You know what? There are a lot of people uneasy about him, us included. But Sage, one about the guy who's been able to win big games in these playoffs this year and last year. He played very well in the playoffs last year. So I think Stuart Skinner is starting to really prove himself right now, especially if he can continue this high level of play. Now, Dan, I don't know who you hate more, Stuart Skinner or Joseph Woll. I have not been able to determine this yet.
Joseph Woll by far.
But you're still uneasy in Stuart Skinner even after a performance like tonight, aren't you?
Oh, 100%. When I say I hate Joseph Woll, I don't hate him as a person. I'm sure he's a very nice human being. But it's been, 3 years now we lost in the playoffs with him on net? Anyway, when it comes to Stuart Skinner here, I hope I'm wrong. But I think he still has a bad game in him. The difference is this time, Calvin Pickard, the AHL wonder, is 6-0 in the playoffs. So Skinner does have a bad game. Yeah, maybe it's not so bad this year. I'll be honest, after Skinner allowed that third goal, I would have actually pulled him.
Why would you pull him off a breakaway goal with terrible back? Okay, Pete DeBoer, calm down. This is exactly the reason why the Edmonton Oilers are in the finals. Well, the Dallas Stars are watching the finals.
It's not that bad.
It is that bad. You're going to blame your goalie for allowing a breakaway goal on Sam Bennett, the best goal scorer in the playoffs currently. No, you're not.
Yeah, but repeat that sentence for me. Repeat that sentence. Did we have that on the bingo card? That Sam Bennett, not Captain Underpants, not Connor McDavid, not Alexander Ovechkin. That Sam Bennett is the top goal scorer in the NHL playoffs. Did we have that on our bingo cards? Anybody?
You realize
going once, going twice? No.
However,
yes, he's going to be a free
agent. Is who I was expecting to lead the NHL in goal scoring in the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
I always thought it would have been Leon Draisaitl, who did have 2 big goals tonight. But that is true, Dan. You would not be picking Sam Bennett, which is why we're talking about a bit later in the show, but it's why his salary expectations just keep going up and up. But when you talk about Stuart Skinner, he said in his post game this year that it just feels so much different from last year to this year, right? Yeah. And I think that's the big thing for the Oilers. I think this Oiler group is feeling very different than they did last year. They were down 3-0 after the first 3 games. Well, we already know that can't happen because they won the first one. But let's open up our phones and open that.
One thing is they did give Corey Perry the first assist on that Draisaitl OT goal. Then the second assist was from Connor.
Well, that can't be right because Ryan Nugent-Hopkins passed it, but okay.
Unless he tipped it.
Because it went Perry to Nugent-Hopkins to McDavid to whatever. The NHL needs.
One thing I will say about Skinnerville, since we're still talking about this,
we could wake up in the morning and score sheeping change.
Skinner did say in the pregame show that there's 2 same goalies this year, but he feels different. And I see that in him. I think he is a better goalie this year. I really do.
And let's be honest, Bobrovsky has played a lot of hockey in the last 3 years. Yeah. And he's getting older. And I'm not saying Bobrovsky was bad tonight. I thought Bobrovsky was good tonight. Mm-hmm. But if Edmonton can continue to put 40-plus shots on Bobrovsky, that's going to be tough. But let's now open up that Streakers app. And it's the best app you will ever put on your cell phone. It's even better than MapQuest was back in the day when no one else could get you directions and where you need to go in your life. But who is going to win game 2? I am going to go first and say Edmonton takes a 2-0 series lead going into game 2. I think Edmonton is feeling very confident. I love their game. You clean up the faceoffs and don't take a couple of dumb penalties in the first period, this game probably doesn't even go to overtime. So I'm very confident in the Edmonton Oilers right now, and I think they're going to win game 2. Mr. Moore for your money.
Yes, sir.
Are you as confident as I am, or you keep saying Stuart Skinner's going to have a bad game, so is Florida going to tie this series up heading back to the Sunshine State?
I gotta admit, I'm a little stumped. You got me on the supplies here, because in the notes for the episode of the podcast, you put who will win game 1. So I put
clearly I meant game 2.
1. Oh, that's easy. So I just put everything. I thought, it was a trick question or something. Okay, that's bounty points for me. But anyway, game 2. I have to agree with you, Mr. Jacob. I think Edmonton is going to take a 2-0 series lead with that home crowd advantage. The $1 million question will be who wins game 3. Because game 3 in Florida, if Edmonton can win game 3 in Florida, then it's a stranglehold. They're kind of like Edmonton wins last year. But if Florida wins in Florida, and I say hypothetically, Edmonton wins their 2 games at home, Florida wins their 2 games at home, then we're seeing a 3-game series, and we're getting to that long 7-game series. We got Mr. Gray and I, for 2 Dans, the double Ds, are predicting.
Never call yourself the double Ds ever again. Chazzy.
I realized that after.
Who are you taking in game 2?
Double coffee, bro.
Oh, I'm definitely sticking with the Edmonton Oilers, but just looking at playoff Bob and what Edmonton did tonight, getting 36 shots in 3 periods, 46 in the game. But that was the playoff Bob only faced 30 shots or more in 4 of the 17 playoff games going into tonight. So if Edmonton like we said earlier, Edmonton can continue to get these shots through. Florida blocking them, obviously leading the playoffs. If they continue that success, then we're gonna see an interesting game 3. Because if you look back to you guys' Leafs series, Leafs up 2-0, you lose a tight one in OT, which flipped the script. So if Edmonton could turn the tide and win that game 3 in overtime, then I don't know, game 4, game 5 is going to be interesting. Maybe hoisting the cup.
Yeah, and that's kind of Chaz the way I feel too. I think if Edmonton can get a 2-0 series lead and then potentially win game 3, I think this could be a quicker series than what everyone else is projecting.
That's what it
sounds weird. I don't see this series going 6. I think it's either going 4 or 5 or it's going 7. That's my 2 cents on that. But now let's get into some of the props here that I've set up for you guys. And Chazzy, since you always talk about playoff Bob, I think in your spare time you drink milk and Bob for hours. So does Sergei Bobrovsky at least have a 91 save percentage after in game 2?
90. Oh yes. He's going to be ready to face more shots. Yes.
Mine one that I picked for myself, will Evander Kane get 1 point? I'm going to say yes. I know he was out off the score sheet in game 1, but he was physical. He was really an impact player. And I think he's going to continue to be an impact player and make a big difference for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Dan, I gave you the one that I just want to hear you rant about goaltending again, because I love listening to you talk about goaltending, so you know absolutely nothing about it. Well, Stuart Skinner allowed 2 goals or less in game 2.
No, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I think Skinner is going to allow 3, possibly 4 goals.
However, I think Edmonton has just shown that Skinner can let in 3 and they can still beat Florida.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not even slamming Skinner when I'm saying that, right?
Skinner?
It's just that you look at how talented both teams are. Mm-hmm. I mean, Barkov, we discussed it on the show, is arguably the best two-way center in hockey behind Sidney Crosby. You got Reinhart, that was a 50-goal scorer 2 years ago. I say Verheedy's one of the most underrated players in the league. You got Matthew Tkachuk, which is a point-a-game player, and we're arguing he's not even good enough. Sam Bennett out of nowhere is leading the playoffs in goal scoring. So it's like, Stuart Skinner is facing some very good people. So, yeah, I think he's going to allow 3 or 4 goals.
I disagree with you. I'm going to call you out on that one. So make sure you send me a rivalry for that, because no, Stuart Skinner's going to have a good game. He's going to allow 2 or less. But I want to move on now to the Toronto
50 points to me. Woohoo!
Blue Jays. Okay.
Blue Jays.
Let's play ball. And the Blue Jays won another big game against the Phillies. After
98 wins
in the series pretty badly. They won a tight one last night. And they've now won 6 of the last 7. Which is
they beat their former closer.
Yeah.
And what I've been impressed with this Jays run, they have found multiple ways to win games. Whether it's winning 8-7 barn burners, 2-0 games, winning 8-4. Like, they're finding ways to win, just win, right? It's not always the prettiest. Like, tonight they won 2-1, and it took until the 9th inning for them to get that winning run, right? But, I mean, at the end of the day, they're finding ways to win, and Barrels had a great game pitching.
Another 6 innings. Another 6 innings.
Remember I said going into the season, I think it was really key for the starters to try to go at least 6 innings?
Yep.
And we're seeing it when their starters can get into past, that 6th inning. It's giving the bullpen less work to do. And Hoffman did his job. Brandon Little, Chad Green, not Chad Kruger. This ain't no Nickelback story here for the Toronto Blue Jays. But what the Blue Jays are able to do, they're just finding different ways to win ball games. I still want to see a little more. Oh my gosh, that was terrifying. I still want to see a little more consistency from the offense. It is frustrating. There are not many nights we get really good pitching and really good offense in the same night. But overall, I mean, the Blue Jays are now right back in the playoff hunt, where I was talking about their season could be done before it even started. And all of a sudden now they're right back in that hunt on a good stretch. Like, I mean, I still think it's important to try to close out this series with a win. I mean, they got a game. They have one more game today that we'll get into a little bit later to do that. But, I mean, you're looking at this. They can do this. This homestand is very, very good. And then you're on the road for a little bit before you're back home against the Diamondbacks. You have a really good chance to set yourself up going into the end of June when you face the Red Sox and the Yankees in back-to-back series, that maybe you can really make some good headway in the AL East.
Something I want to point out quickly, guys. We've talked about this on the show. That, the Blue Jays are not swinging the bats enough, and not getting enough offense, blah, blah, blah. And you look at the scoreboards and stuff, when you see like 2-1 games and stuff like that, you might agree with that. However, I was looking at the stats, looking at the numbers, as Mr. Calculator, I like numbers and all that fine stuff. When you look at players leading for leagues, like leading home runs and leading RBIs and leading in averages and stuff, no Jays on that list. However, when you look at the Jays stats individually, for all very even. You all got quite a few players with 20 or plus RBIs, probably about 4 or 5 of them, for say, top of my head, out of the 9 hitters. And you got a good 3 or 4 Jays of over 8 home runs. And considering we're just starting June, that's not bad. And it's pretty consistent through the lineup. It's kind of like when you have hockey, you don't have that big 50-goal scorer, but you have 4 25-goal scorers. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, you know what? More for you. You do make an interesting point there. I still think with how much you're playing Vladdy and how much you're paying Bo Bichette, you expect a bit more of them offensively.
Oh,
but
I agree.
If you're winning games and get into the playoffs, then, well, who cares, right? Because you look at the New York Yankees, they get runs like no tomorrow, but they can't defend to save their lives. Right. So, I don't know. But at least I think for the Blue Jays, at least you're seeing some legitimate progress. And you're seeing a team that seems to have found somewhat of a formula. They are currently 5.5 games behind the Yankees for first in the AL. They are tied with the Rays for second in the AL East. Awesome. So you're ahead of the Red Sox and you're ahead of the Orioles, right? So a big thing is, too, you know what? Your home record is 21-13. If you can just get a little bit better on the road, because you're under 500 on the road. If you can get your road record to 500, you got a pretty good shot of making the playoffs if you're the Jays. Like, Chazzy, are you starting to feel like maybe this team is starting to turn a corner?
Oh, yeah, hopefully. As long as we can stay healthy. Again,
you sound as positive as we do in Leaf Nation.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it's still early, right? And it always comes down to injuries, and if we can stay healthy, and like you said earlier, the bullpen, we said it earlier, if the bullpen can stay consistent and our starters can go 5 or 6 strong, then we obviously got a chance to win some games here.
Now, mind you, though, you talk about staying healthy. The Jays have been able to win games without staying healthy.
True.
Right? You got Varsho injured. You've had Scherzer injured, which I know you think bringing in a pitcher is going to fix your batting. So I'm very interested to see how that happens.
No, I said motivation of his caliber of a pitcher and just what that does for a clubhouse. It's not so much the batter.
You know, I'm just bugging
It's the pitching. It's year after year where we faltered is the bullpen. This year it seems to be a little like last year wasn't too bad, but this year seems to be a little bit better.
Actually, I was going to say, I think the bullpen for the Jays, for the most part, have been pretty damn good.
Especially,
too, you got a guy like Easton Lucas that even keeps bouncing between AAA and the MLB, and he's been playing really well. Like, I think the Jays have a much deeper bullpen than they have in years past, which is great to see.
Barros is actually doing. Barros has went 6 his last 3, and I think he's only been averaging 2 or 3 hits a game. So I think tonight
you're getting what you need out of your pitching. The consistency, I just like to see a little more consistency with the batting throughout the lineup. I think that's how you get this team to that next level. But speaking of next level, they close out their series tonight against the Phillies. So again, the MLB is in the Streakers app. If you didn't know that, well then, no cap. See, I don't have it.
But I don't think they found the right formula of that batting lineup yet, though.
No, they haven't.
Fully comfortable with that.
Which, I mean, I don't know how you haven't figured that out by now. Like,
yeah, I know.
Like, you've already played like almost 60 games. Like, what are you doing with your life? What you should be doing with your life is downloading the Streakers app. But I want to ask you guys, who wins this critical game? The Blue Jays or the Phillies? Mr. Moore for your money. The one and only. The true homie. The real G. The one who is the brother of me. Who wins?
Wow, it's an afternoon game.
I'm taking for Jays in this one. I think this is a big statement game. Philly is obviously a much better team than Toronto. But what I said, in order to make the playoffs, get a good spot in the division, you got to beat your division and beat the teams better than you, and also dominate the games that you're worse than, right? And so far, in the last few weeks, the Jays have been doing that. So I think this is a big statement victory, a big statement game. And if they can do that, and they're going into beginning of June over 500, pushing for second spot, possibly pushing a home field and first in division. I think in the beginning of June, this is kind of right where you want to be. So I think the Jays are going to take this one.
Who are you taking, Chad? Are you on Dan's train of whatever substance he's on, thinking the Jays are going to get 98 wins this year? Or do you think the Phillies, who, let's be honest, I think on paper are the better team, are going to take the series?
I don't know about the 98 wins, but I will give the Jays the win tomorrow. Bassett versus Luzardo. Luzardo just got absolutely lit for 12 hits, 12 runs.
He got lit,
an ERA of 12, 2 home runs in 3 1/3 of an inning. So if he can bounce back from that, I don't know. I think the Jays could probably get to him. So I'm going to say Jays.
I want to say Jays, but I'm not going to.
Whoa.
I think the Phillies will win this series. I think the Jays, they've won 6 of the last 7. It's great. You're probably going to lose this one and then unfortunately take a tough loss heading into your next series. I think the Jays are certainly a better team than they were a month ago, but I still think there's some things they got to clean up, and I think this could be a bit of a wake-up call. I could see them just really struggling to get the bats going again. But time will tell. But I want to get into what I say is one of the most wonderful times of the year, and that's the Canadian Football League starting up.
Yeah.
We got 4 games on the docket to start the season. On Thursday night, which again, we will have a CFL preview show leading into that first game of the season. We have the Ottawa Red Blacks versus the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Then Friday night, Toronto Argos versus the Montreal Alouettes. Then Saturday is the doubleheader that Dan runs away for. He really doesn't want to watch this doubleheader, apparently, between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Calgary Stampeders. I know, Chaz, you got to be excited to see that offense rocking in regular season action. And then we have the Edmonton Elks versus the BC Lions. That was terrifying. And I will say one thing, though, about the schedule. I think the Thursday game should be Toronto versus Winnipeg.
I agree. That's what I was going to say.
Why is that? Because of the Grey Cup?
Yeah. I like it when the first game of the season is a Grey Cup rematch. Yeah. I get setting the tone by starting the season in Saskatchewan. People will argue if Saskatchewan or Winnipeg has the best fans, but I mean, Rider Nation is one of those nations that they're just a different breed when it comes to football, man. Like,
every sporting event you go to in Canada, you will see at least one Rough Rider jersey.
In fact, I saw the Edmonton game.
I saw in the Edmonton game. Yep, every event you go to.
But I mean, I think this is overall, though, I do think it's a pretty good slate of games. You have the Eastern Final rematch. You're closing off the season with 2 Canadian quarterbacks duking out between Trey Ford and Nathan Rourke. Hamilton versus Calgary. You have Bo Levi Mitchell going against his former team. Vernon Adams Jr., I think hopefully for him on a bit of a revenge tour this season. I think this is going to be a heck of a good game. Do want to remind all our viewers as well, the Canadian Football League is in the Streakers app. So make sure you're playing along with the Canadian Football League. But I want to ask, what is the game you guys are most excited for? I'm going to start off, though, by saying the Elks versus the Lions. As much as I'm wearing my Argos jersey, I'm always excited for an Argo game. As just a pure CFL fan, I'm really excited to see 2 Canadian quarterbacks duke it out and kind of
Don't you have these guys at the bottom of the standings in your power ranking?
That's the Third Down Nation power ranking. I'm not sure where my power rankings are on that yet, which we'll get into. But I'm excited to see these 2 Canadian quarterbacks. Trey Ford is a guy that I'm excited to see what he can do of actually being the starting quarterback all through training camp and seeing if he can be the starter, like, for a team and make them a winning club, right? Because Trey Ford has always been given the opportunity once Edmonton's lost a crap ton of games to try to fix it. Now he's got the chance to be the driver at the start of the season. And you got Nathan Rourke, who 2 or 3 years ago was the best player in the CFL. Then last year he sucked. I'm just going to call flat out, he was terrible. 4 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. He was bad. Mm-hmm. So can Nathan Rourke find his game again and become the face of the league that people want him to be? So I think this is the game that I'm really excited about. But Mr. More for Your Money, what's the game that you're looking on this doc and you're just like, oh man, I can't wait.
I'm looking at Toronto and Montreal. Toronto and Montreal are a big rivalry, of course. We've always hated one another. And they're in Montreal, McGill University. They pack up that stadium. Actually, we've been selling so many tickets there. There's been rumors rumbling of Montreal. Oh, that's moving back to Olympic Stadium, which would be really cool to see. Actually, I remember them playing their playoff games back in Anthony Cavill days there. That's a pretty magical stadium. So that would be cool to see. But anyway, I'm excited for this game in particular because David Alexander went 5-0 last year. They traded out their MOP, I should say, MOP player in Cody Fajardo, which I agree he kind of had a bad playoff last year, but I think trading him was kind of ridiculous, to be honest. And playing a rookie who's only started 5 games, I meant he won 5 games, but put him in to be now your starter instead of Cody Fajardo, I think it's a big mistake. And I'm curious to see if he's going to continue this momentum. I agree with him starting game 1, see what he can do. It's easier to win games at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year. But if he struggles really bad, then you could see McLeod, Bethel, Thompson making a comeback into the CFL. I don't think he will start game 1 or anything. He'll be in game 1. But I'm excited for that. On the Argos side, unfortunately, Mr. Kelly still can barely walk. We saw him in a double blue game. He is walking without clutches, and he is walking in his own power or the power to him, but definitely not in game mode quite yet. We'll see him later on this year, folks. So we have Nick Arbuckle starting in game 1 again. Now, Nick Arbuckle, I've always loved Nick Arbuckle for a very long time. Before the world went upside down, we were going to have Nick Arbuckle as our starting quarterback the year the CFL got canceled. But, there's a lot, but I've always had a lot of faith in him. Pinball's had a lot of faith in him. Dinwiddie's had a lot of faith in him. And he was our most valuable player in the Grey Cup and got us the Grey Cup victory. So I'm really curious if he's going to carry on the momentum and all of that and how good of a quarterback he's going to be in game 1.
Now, just when you mentioned Chad Kelly, Danny, quickly, do you want to jump in? He has been cleared for practice, and he actually is physically able to play at this point. He's progressed a lot since we last saw him at the double blue game. However, the room from what we're hearing is I don't think we're going to see Kelly until at least week 2, maybe not even week 3, which I think is the right call if you're Toronto, to be honest with you. But
I 100% agree. If Nick Arbuckle goes down and dominates Montreal, gets like the victory and a couple of touchdowns, keep him for week 2 too, right? I totally agree with that. The other player I'm excited for, the couple other key notes, I think it was crazy the Argos releasing Carey and Brown this week. But we do have the exciting rookie running back in Williams. And rumor has it Williams would have been drafted in the NFL if he was a couple inches taller.
And didn't have an injury
problem. I'm really curious to see how he plays. We saw him live in double blue game. He looked really good. And I'm also excited to see Cameron Judd's debut as an Argo too. It's a big name in Calgary for a very long time. He'll be a big name in Argo land. So our defensive line suffered a little bit by getting Cameron Judd. So I'm really excited to see him play. So that's the game I'm excited for.
And when you do mention Mayan Williams, he was in Ohio. He was an Ohio State standout player, right? And he signed with the Argos in January of 2025. And I think he's a guy that the Argos were really high on. Rushed for over 800 yards in his last full season in Ohio. And this guy's he's a bully type running back, right? Even though he's smaller, he's very physical. He will run people over. And he seems to be able to be a guy that I think can be a game changer, right? Like you look at his last years, you look kind of at his stats where he's been able to progress quite a bit, like in the year 2022, right? And 128 rushes, 825 yards, averaging 6.4 yards a carry and 14 touchdowns. Wow. Then he got injured in 2023, right? But he's a guy that I think what they're hoping with him is if he didn't get injured in 2023, a lot of people think he's an NFL quality running back. And I think that's the only reason why of Kadeem Carey. Now, I do want to bring up a little conspiracy theory about Kadeem Carey and my thoughts on that. You guys can think I'm crazy if you want. The Toronto Argonauts are currently running 4 quarterbacks because of the Chad Kelly injury, right? I do wonder once Chad Kelly's back, and unfortunately, I think then they probably drop down to 3 quarterbacks or probably Tucker Horn moving down to the practice squad. I won't be shocked if we see Kadeem Carey coming back to the Toronto Argonauts after that situation kind of unfolds because then you have the roster space to bring him back onto the lineup. But Chazzy, I am sure you're very excited about your Calgary Stampeders getting back out there offensively. We saw in the preseason, right? Like Vernon Adams Jr. just looked on. However, you are going to have to do it without Malik Henry, who was one of your top receivers a couple years ago. And unfortunately, he is on the injured list once again, and he is not expected to be back anytime soon. They believe Henry passed a physical, and he looks to be returning from multiple leg injuries, but it's more looking not until Labor Day. However, you still got to be feeling pretty confident about that Calgary offense either way, even without a stud like Malik Henry.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think Reggie will step up. It'll be interesting to see what Lanes Hamilton does with new leadership. They have a new coach this year, a new GM.
They have a new defensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator, and a new stud wide receiver. So there's a lot of change there, especially Kenny Lawler. I think that's the big change there, right?
You're giving it could have been the biggest move of the offseason, arguably.
Well, because you missed the playoffs last year. Now you have Bo and White as your top wideout. Now you're going to go against Vernon and Reggie and the staff. So it'll be interesting to see I'm also interested to see what this field looks like, how that transpires for the players and player safety, especially on that field out there. I think new innovation or something they're saying about the field and should help with player safety. But yes, very excited to these two offenses squaring off in the first week. Should be entertaining. Just like you said, we'll see what the defenses can do. But high hopes here about Vernon as long as he stays healthy.
Well, my big thing for this is too, these are two teams that didn't make the playoffs last year that made some major changes. Hamilton went out and got Kenny Lawler, the best wide receiver on the market, because they felt they needed a little more spunk out of the wide receiver group. Calgary knew they needed a better quarterback.
What about Lewis? You think he's the best?
Eugene Lewis in Ottawa now. You could argue Lewis or Lawler, but I mean, you could argue Kenny Lawler is the best receiver in the Canadian Football League when he's healthy. So they went out and got Kenny Lawler. And Calgary, they felt like they desperately needed a quarterback, and they went out and got the best quarterback on the market, maybe the best quarterback in the league. And for some reason, no one seems to have Vernon Adams Jr. as their top quarterback in the CFL.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, I think it's a toss-up between him, Kelly, and Mitchell. Right? So, I mean, this could be a real star-studded game, and I'm excited to see the new-look defensive line on the Calgary Stampeders, especially since they added Flo. I think that's a group that's going to be looking to get some sacks, and if you can get some pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell early, that could create some turnovers. But, of course, we can't forget about Ottawa versus Saskatchewan. This is a game I'm looking forward to see what this Drew Brown offense can do in its second year with Drew Brown at the starting quarterback. Weirdly enough, people are rating Ottawa very low in a lot of their rankings, and I think Ottawa, they maybe slowed down at the end of the year, but I mean they have a stud in Drew Brown. They brought in Eugene Lewis, who you could also argue was the best wide receiver available in free agency, and they also fixed their running back situation by bringing in William Stanback. If you're the Saskatchewan Roughriders, you have a healthy Trevor Harris, and with a healthy Trevor Harris, you might be the best team in the CFL.
I mean, I think Ottawa's kind of the wild card. It's kind of the sweeper pick, right? Everyone says Ottawa is such a weak team. I don't think they are. I think they're a very good team. I mean, they weren't far off last year. They did make the playoffs. I mean, the Argos beat them, but they did make it.
Because right now, when we look at the CFL power rankings from Third Down Nation,
I think Bob Dice coaches them well, too.
Bob Dice is a great coach. But when we look at the power rankings, and well, we'll talk about them more on our live show later today. But they have Montreal rated as the best team in the CFL, then Winnipeg, then Saskatchewan, then Toronto, then Ottawa, BC, Hamilton, Edmonton, Calgary at 9th. I will say Calgary at 9th, I think, is absolutely ludicrous.
Wow.
Wow.
I think Calgary, honestly, I would put BC lower than Calgary.
Yeah, me too.
And Montreal is not the top team in the league anymore, in my opinion. No. I'm not going to give you who my top team is right now. You're going to hear about that later today on our live show.
Yep.
But I kind of did want to mention those. And you know what? For the live show, too, we're also going to go over our top 10 players in the CFL. We're going to rank these players, the top 10. We're going to go over the our power rankings going into the season, make our Grey Cup prediction, because why the hell not? And I do want to throw one thing at you guys before we move off the CFL. I've seen some people say this is the year Nathan Rourke becomes the face of the league. And I personally am curious on your thoughts on that, especially considering we're seeing who's the better quarterback this year, Rourke or Adams, right? Both of these guys were teammates before. It was a real drift in the locker room when Rourke kind of took over that team. But will Nathan Rourke become the face of the league this year? Dan, I want your opinion on it first.
No. Straight up, no. Straight up, no. The reason why I don't think he was that great when he was the face of the league. Yeah, he had a really good season. And then in the playoffs, he just completely fell apart. And I said it back then. I mean, this guy could be a Maple Leaf. He doesn't have what it takes to win any do-or-die games, do-or-die situations. I mean, you saw him like crying with a clipboard basically when he was losing that playoff game, you know. And I think in order to be the dominant player of not just the franchise but the league, you have to win in the playoffs. And if you don't win in the playoffs, you got to do what Connor McDavid did in dressing room of last year, getting your guys going and energized and, you know, not sulking like a crybaby. So I don't think he had it to begin with, and I don't think he has it now. I think from him going to the NFL and holding a clipboard, I think it made him worse than what he was. I mean, everyone's like, oh, he's so young, he's so young. Well, now he's 4 years older, right? Now he's almost in his 30s. Like, I think he had his opportunity to be the franchise of the league. I mean, if he stayed, I get he made his money in the NFL holding his clipboard, but if he stayed in the CFL another year and got another playoff one in him, maybe, and then after that, maybe he stayed another year, won the Grey Cup, then went in the NFL. Maybe he could have made an NFL team, right? But I think he jumped the gun a little too early when he wasn't mature enough, and I think he blew his opportunity. That's just me personally.
And actually, when I think about the face of the league in the CFL, I'm going to go off the board, and I think of two players. I think of Brady Oliveira, who's a Canadian boy. He is the best running back in the league, and it's not even a question. And I look at Wynton McManus of the Toronto Argos. I think those are two guys that have really became the face of the league in the CFL. And it's interesting for me to say a middle linebacker is the face of the league. But when you think of CFL, you think of the man with the cool hair and the toothpick, and you think of Wynton McManus. And when you think of the league that is normally a passing league that can be dominated by a running back, you think about Mr. Brady Oliveira, a Canadian-born talent, a guy from Winnipeg getting to play for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Like, man, that's just a cherry on top. And I don't know if necessarily Nathan Rourke is going to be your poster boy. It depends if he has a great season, but Trey Ford could be your poster boy. Another Canadian quarterback came up through the system, worked really hard to be the starter in Edmonton, and he's a guy that is exciting. I mean, I think some of the craziest plays I've ever witnessed personally were done by Trey Ford. When
we saw
17 sacks and is running around like a running back and then throws a 40-yard dart to the end zone, right?
Crazy.
So, but on another flip side, I think a face of the league could be Vernon Adams Jr. out in Calgary. Like Chazzy, you were saying you're excited to see what Vernon Adams Jr. can do. Let's say VA puts up a 6,000-yard passing season, which before he got injured last year, that's what he was on pace for. Do you think it's possible that he could become the face of the league?
Oh, quite possible. But we also, I think we spoke about these in the early days on the island when we were making our sandcastles about just the league overall and identifying themselves and really making it the Canadian game and marketing themselves. And I think if you're looking at this, you take a couple guys from each team and you sort of make it as one big league and you market it across the whole country, right? So you make it as there's a number of players that you could take. Why do you have to take one or two as the face?
Yeah.
Take a few from each of the team, branded as each of the team, one united league, which is 9 teams. it's quite possible that many number of teams, right? So
Great
you're
point.
seeing a lot of the younger years of these professional women's leagues doing it at a very successful clip. They're getting a lot of fans out. They're generating momentum. They're great. They're generating that grassroots momentum, that foundation that is and we said it earlier, like CFL has an opportunity to do that right now. Really build up that brand, build up the sport and the excitement. And like you guys say, I'm very excited to pay attention for the whole season and learn from you guys and learn from Streakers Nation and all the CFL fans out there on how exciting the Canadian game is. So.
And you know what? It's interesting enough. We've talked about that, the marketing, and actually the Canadian Football League has been using that in their marketing, and so is TSN. Like, it's a Canadian-born product. It's a league that's been around for over 100 years with the Grey Cup.
Generations.
Generational league that it's time for the country to really, really get behind it. And I think this could be the year with, again, I don't want to talk politics. This isn't the Streakers Island political hour, which I still think our friend of the program, Alex, and Dan having a political show would be the funniest thing ever. But that'll be for very, very later down the road. But I think this is the time for the Canadian Football League to really market it's a Canadian-born product. And yeah, Craig, you make an excellent point. Why have one face of the league when you can have 9?
Yeah.
Dan and I recently watched the TSN top 50 players, and we were arguing about how many good players could have been on that list that weren't, how many guys should have been re-ranked, which we will be doing a top 10, maybe even a top 20 list on our preview show. So make sure you stay locked in for that, which that will be later today.
Well, I was going to say too, I love your answer, Jacob. Your players he's pointing out to you are not quarterbacks. And
I don't think it always has to be the quarterback.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Right? You look back in the 90s, for example, pinball is not just a legend to the Argos. He's a legend to the whole league. I mean, you have Tiger Cat fans that love Pinball Clemens, right? And Pinball was a special teams player. I mean, how often is a special teams player a name face to the league?
Like a face of the league. And never mind a face of the league then. Pinball's been a face of the league for the last 20 plus years. Right? When you think of the Canadian Football League, you think of Pinball Clemens.
100%.
But I want to move on to the NBA playoffs, and this is when we have to introduce Mr. Dashing himself.
Oh, yeah.
Who has sent us a beautiful video. Of course, it's beautiful. He's in it. About some things that he wants you to watch out for, especially with you, Dan. Watch and learn, mother trucker.
Okay. What's going on, Streakers Island Podcast? It's your boy, Dashing Lane Dashko. We just had game 1 of the NHL Finals between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, and now it's time to take game 1 to the court as it's Thursday night game 1 tip-off between the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's going to be the SGA versus Tyrese Halliburton show, and I'm all here for it. Should be an interesting series. You got SGA, who's coming off an MVP season, a local Canadian boy trying to lead the Thunder, and you got Tyrese Halliburton, who's been carrying the Pacers on his shoulders. Kind of mad he didn't win the Western Conference Finals MVP, so maybe he's got something to prove here tonight in Game 1. Should be an interesting finals as well. Also, in other NBA news, a bit of a bombshell earlier this week, but after the Knicks get eliminated from the Pacers, they fired their head coach, Tom Thibodeau, and a lot of people thought they were kind of shocked by that, but turns out I haven't heard so much from the players, so you wonder if there's something internally going on there. We'll have to keep updated, but there's some big news in the NBA, and of course we're getting ready for...
Apologize everyone for the glitch. But I mean, we look here, and what Lane's pointing out here, this is going to be a really good series coming up.
And to answer my question, Lane does not have blue eyes, so he better get some contacts.
But it's interesting that he mentions SJ with Alexander being, someone that everyone seems to think is the biggest piece in this series. And Halliburton, Craig, are those the guys you're really looking at? Or I don't know if it's me. I'm kind of looking at Pascal Siakam. He had a really big game in the finals when the Raptors went on their run. I think he could be a really big secondary option in these playoffs that maybe make a big difference.
Well, Siakam just coming off that MVP conference series, but yeah, like I guess the NBA's making it to face Halliburton versus Shai. Like you guys are in Hamilton. Just side note here, has any coverage there been for Shai on winning his MVP?
Oh, people are really excited here in this area to see a local talent. I was talking to my neighbor who said he literally used to watch this guy play on the court locally here, right? Apparently, he's actually from the neighborhood that we live in Hamilton on the escarpment. And you know what? The city's excited for it. I think it's also seen, too, the Canadian talent in the NBA has really, really jumped. Right, like we're seeing it now, especially when the Raptors won that championship in 2019, where you know what, you're seeing more and more Canadians now make the jump to the NBA, and yeah, people are really excited for that. But I don't know, man, I'm really excited to see what Pascal Siakam can do again. I think he's going to be a number 2 option in this series for the Pacers, and I think he's going to surprise some people of how good he is. I know, Dan, you were never a fan of him as a Raptor for some reason, just because you don't like Spice, I guess. I don't know.
I have no reason. He just seemed to be kind of like Joseph Wall. He's like, I don't know, and the big moment happened, he's just gonna get it done.
What are you talking about? He won a championship.
He did. He did improve that.
And in one of those games, he got over 40 points.
I just mean years before that, right? He was so good the year they won that he took his money and left, right? So
that's not true, actually. The Raptors traded him.
He moved them, yeah. But they always said that he was good. He's a top 2, top 1 player on just Indiana's deep. But back to why I was mentioning about Shai, because going into this, Oklahoma's obviously big favorite in the first game. Mm-hmm. Pacers playing the underdog role. Oklahoma City just on defense, just all around just team effort. But comes back down to these two teams, NBA Finals. Jacob, being in the media and TV, would you be concerned on the ratings at the early speculation that they're a little concerned on the low ratings going into this final? And that's where my initial question came from, is like, I think being in Canada here, there's got to be some excitement with Shai winning that award, Oklahoma City. Like, you're going after the NBA championship here, and potentially maybe, I don't know, will they have a mini parade in Hamilton if he's able to bring it back?
Well, it's one of those things, though, you wonder, like, why is the NBA playoffs not getting the best ratings? And I think the issue is, we talked about in the CFL, right, how there's a face, they're trying to find their faces of the league. The faces of the NBA are all kind of old, right? You look at LeBron James and Steph Curry. Those have been the face of the league for so long. And, yeah, I think you're seeing Alexander potentially being that new face of the league, but he hasn't done it yet. Now he's in the finals, so now maybe you're seeing a new face of the league here, right? But I mean,
when you get a ring, it's a lot different. Yeah,
it is. But I do agree with you, Craig. I wonder why in Canada, why we haven't been marketing it better, that there's a Canadian-grown talent dominating the NBA right now, and you need to watch them. I don't know why we're not, why the media has failed, in my opinion, to market this NBA. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much marketing for the NBA Finals. I haven't seen much marketing for the NBA playoffs. I'm a sports junkie. I'm on sports websites and TV channels all day long.
Call me crazy.
You're crazy.
Okay? I don't know. I'll admit it. I don't know much about the NBA. I am learning about basketball on the island and on the Streakers app as I'm challenging people, my sports booths and my rivalries and stuff like that. However, one thing I do know about basketball, it was much more exciting back in the day. And ratings are much higher back in the day. And what happened back in the day? Some iconic, memorable moments that even non-basketball fans remember and love. Like Michael Jordan with the slam dunks. That started the whole crazy thing about the shoes. Vince Carter, Vinsanity, did the slam dunk of the lifetime in the year 2000 at the skills competition. And really put Toronto on the map and put the Raptors on the map. And he was the only player so far to have his number retired as a Raptor.
Was that around the same time he jumped over that 7-footer?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Was that in the Olympics or something?
Yes, yeah. So my point is, ratings were high, and people like myself who weren't generally into basketball were into basketball. when slam dunks were a big thing. You saw slam dunks in the skill competition. You saw all-star franchise players competing in slam dunk competition. But also, you saw slam dunks done in games. Look at that iconic Michael Jordan slam dunk. That was in the playoffs. That was round 2 or round 3 of the playoffs when he did an iconic slam dunk.
Yeah, but Dan, there's been
you look at guys like Steph Curry, who's a 3-pointer dude, and he get all the points. Other people follow him and whacks up the scoreboard, yada, yada, yada. That's all exciting. But guess what? You're just adding numbers to the scoreboard. You're not making it entertaining. And since they kind of eliminated the slam dunk from the big boys, it's not as entertaining.
I agree with you to a point. I don't think it's Steph Curry's fault. I think it's other players trying too hard to do something they can't do.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing
but I mean,
Steph
if
Curry.
you think about legendary moments, I think of Kawhi Leonard's game breaker shot off, like hitting the rim 5 or 6 times.
Well, that's
the greatest moments that I ever watched in the NBA, and that's not a dunk. Like that's big shots can. I think of even this series with Halbert when he made that huge buzzer beater shot where he drove in, then randomly ran backwards and jacked up a 3 with under a second left. Like 3-pointing basketball can be exciting. I just think the NBA needs to market these playoffs better.
Yeah.
And instead of maybe they need to try to figure out, you know what, before we talk about changing the product, let's just try to get the product in front of more people, right? Like figure out if this marketing isn't working, what can we do to market the league better? Like the NHL does a good job at marketing their star players. We always see ads about the golden era of the NHL, whether it's the golden era or not, that's your decision. But the NHL is making you hyped, right? You watch all these NHL playoff ads and they're hype, and you don't just see it. Like I'll be watching like a random YouTube video and I get an NHL ad. I don't get an NBA ad. And by the cookies, the way the internet works, I should be getting sports ads. I get ads to soccer, and I don't care about soccer. Not saying that soccer is a bad sport, but I mean, like for the NBA, maybe they need to figure out a way to be getting the advertising in front of people more to let them know, like, hey, this is a big deal. It's the NBA Finals. We have some amazing talent in this final, and it's going to be something. Now, what will also help is if Game 1's a real nail-biter game, that's going to help your ratings a lot, right?
Is it a budget thing? Does the NBA don't have
the
money?
NBA has money.
Yeah, they're world dominant.
Like you say, ticket sales are down, right?
They still have money, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah. They still have more money than I do.
Then why not market your product if you have money?
It's a great question. That's why I'm not sure about. But you look at the NHL playoffs, how they start off in Game 1 with a barn burner overtime come from behind win. I honestly think the NBA needs something like that to start the playoffs. Like if you get a blowout game in Game 1, that's going to be tough, right? And that's been the issue in these playoffs, I think, too. The games haven't been that close. You guys may hate me for this.
20, 30-point blowouts in the playoffs.
Do we need less teams making the playoffs so we just get better series? Right now in the NBA, no, but and hear me out on this. The gap between the good and bad teams in the NBA are so big. So, like, you look in the East, a bunch of teams make the playoffs that weren't even 500. No. You don't see an 8th seed beat a 1st seed very often in the NBA. So maybe if we just start the playoffs with better matchups or enforce a real salary cap, not this luxury cap BS, where we actually get 30-plus teams that are good. Like or at least watchable. There's a issue in the NBA and same in baseball. Like, would you call the White Sox watchable in the MLB? I sure as hell wouldn't.
No.
And I think that's the issue in the NBA, too. You got teams in the NBA that are barely watchable.
Well, look at Seattle, for example. Seattle is doing very poorly in baseball this year. I saw a post shared, I believe the BiPup shared it, actually. The attendance in Seattle are crazy low. I think there was like under 10,000 people in the last home. Yeah, between 5,000 and 10,000 people, right? And when you put a bad product, you don't really blame them. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The first series in basketball in the playoffs, is it a 5-game series or a 7-game series?
It's a 3. They have their little play-in.
They have the play-in, too.
See, that's a mistake right there. I agree with Jacob. They should eliminate, maybe do 1 to 6 teams to have 1 versus 8 and have all 7-game series like the NHL.
Well, no, it's just because I'm not even so much concerned about how long the series are. I'm concerned that they're not competitive.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to watch blowout games all the time? Nobody does. They're boring. And this isn't me saying that the league isn't talented. And I think maybe instead of changing the product on the court, you need to find a way to make everyone more competitive as a group.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And that's where actually it looks like the Toronto Raptors are trying to be more competitive as a group. Right? And I don't know if you boys have heard the rumors that the Raptors are going after Giannis Antetokounmpo. I did not write his name in the scripts. I have no idea how to spell Giannis Antetokounmpo. I wasn't even close. But I find this interesting with the Raptors, and maybe more teams need to be pushed the way the Raptors do. At least the Raptors, they see they suck and they're trying to get and they're looking into ways to get better.
I give them a lot of respect for making, Mr. Daskal talked about and compared it to the Maple Leafs. The GM, Nigeria, whatever his name is.
Ujiri. Yeah. Brilliant man. Brilliant man.
He is. He's a brilliant man.
He the risk.
He makes the big moves like trading DeRozan for Kyle Lowry, right?
Not for Kyle Lowry. No. You're close. I mean, they traded DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard. Kyle Lowry was also a huge risk when the Raptors got him, though, right? He was a guy that was bounced around the league a lot. Everyone said had an attitude problem. Kyle Lowry admits he had an attitude problem back then. But my big question for you guys is, could Giannis Antetokounmpo make the Raptors a real contender? You know, you have Scotty Barnes, you have Brandon Ingram, you have someone else, and I'm dropping the ball on with their name.
You have a Dick.
You have Grady Dick, who actually has really improved in the last couple of years. So, Chazzy, I want to ask you, because Dan might just talk about Grady Dick's something a little too personal. What are you thinking about the Raptors if they go and get Giannis Antetokounmpo? Do you think that makes this team like a contender, competitive, or is it too early to make a move like that?
Just the side before I get into that, I think that's way too early because you guys just made a blockbuster splash that he hasn't even played a game yet. And you already have those big three that seem to work on paper, and we just got to see it on the court. But back to the playoffs, the NBA changed its 4 7-game series, but over the last couple of years, they went to that play-in for the bottom, three teams, which is just adding more games, adding more workload, which we always talk about load management in the NBA and that. So now your 8th seed team, which is going against the first place team, is even more gassed going into the first round of a 7-game series. And I didn't look how many sweeps were this year, but that's got to play into the favor. So I think on the NBA, on the playoff side, I think they're still trying to tinker on what's going to work. And back to our point of what's going to be the most competitive and entertaining in that first round. But with your Raptors question, I don't know. I guess what are you going to give up? Are you just going to sign them? Are you going to give up? Now you're changing again, which you sort of changed the philosophy mid-season last year. And I don't see what you got right now, but I guess if you got to pick up the Greek Freak, he's not every year that you're going to get a generational player like that. But is he done winning championships, or does he have more?
Well, and that's my thing too. I don't know. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo is he's a phenomenal player, and he's been a generational talent in this league. But is he still a generational talent? And I agree with you, Chazzy. What are you giving up? Like, if you have to send like a Scotty Barnes to get Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm saying no way to hell. And that's my worry, right? I don't know if it's giving up draft picks, if it's giving up prospects. It was Quickly was the other guy I was trying to think of. You know,
Quickly.
Quickly. He's a
stud. For me, it depends what the Raptors have to give up to make this trade happen. I get when you have a chance to bring in Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have to at least consider it, right? He's a very good player, and he's a player that in theory makes his team better. He's a plug-and-play guy. And he's a top player that is rumored that actually would like to sign in Toronto. He likes the city. He likes the vibe. And that's all fine and dandy because it is harder to find guys who want to play in Toronto. But I'm going to say it right now. I don't think Giannis Antetokounmpo makes this team a championship team, maybe a playoff team. But I don't even know. The second half of the year, if the Raptors played that pace the whole season, they would have made the playoffs. So I'll be honest with you. If you have to give up like a Scotty Barnes or a Brandon Ingram that you just got to get
You haven't even seen what those three.
And that's what I mean. I'm not pulling the trigger on this trade if I'm Masai Ujiri. I understand he wants to win championships. Okay, let me put it this way. Remember when Jokic was available and everyone was like, what the hell? The Lakers just got him. And I know it didn't work. I could see it if the Raptors had the ability to bring in that kind of guy, right? Like a player that can literally change your lineup, right? He's a guy that can be the guy that can really just attack and change this team forever. But when I look at Jonas Antetokounmpo, I don't think he's that guy anymore, right? I don't see him as the guy that can be that pure driving the offense. And like I said, if you have to trade Scotty Barnes, who I think Scotty Barnes is the type of guy that I think the league is going to change into players like Scotty Barnes. He's a bigger guy that can dunk, he can block, he can rebound, but he can also shoot three. I'm not doing it. But it's interesting what the Colorado Avalanche did. I want to drop back into hockey for a minute here. And Lane wants to bring us an update about Brock Nelson, which this update made me very sad.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Dashing Lane Dashko. We do have some breaking news in the NHL today as one fish is off the free agency board. As it appears, Brock Nelson is going to be staying in Colorado as a Colorado Avalanche for 3 years at $7.5 million per year. He came out and said he loves the team, he loves the atmosphere, doesn't want to leave, so he's staying put in Colorado. He also gets a full no-trade clause year 1 and 2 and a 15-team modified no-trade clause in year 3. So he gets paid. The Colorado Avalanche gets a second-line center to bolster their lineup and maybe get a few more guys to add to it. I think it's a really good addition for the Colorado Avalanche. You can't lose another player on this team, especially if Martin Necas is re-signing. As it appears he's not happy in Colorado, but they were able to get one of their big centers locked down, so they got a 2-1-2 center punch going into next season. What do you guys think? I think it's a big signing, and that's one less fish off the board in July 1st.
Wow. Yeah, I will say I'm actually very surprised about this deal. I didn't think he was going to re-sign in Colorado, but apparently he loves the atmosphere. And at that $7.5 million, I do wonder, does this set the cap for some of these other guys coming up in the free agents? Like a Matt Duchene, like a Sam Bennett, and Craig, I see you had your hand up like a very polite schoolgirl who is wanting to answer that 2 + 2 does not equal banana. So, Craig, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just hearing what Lane had to say there, is this the tide? Is this where we see the tide changing in these contracts? Listen to what Lane just said. Modified 15-team list. 2 of the 3 years is under a no trade clause. Is this what we're going to start hearing more of in these negotiations, particularly in hockey?
I think teams are going to learn from Kyle Dubas's mistakes, and giving players 100% no move clause. It just handicaps you too much, right? Like, you know what? For my comment on this, I want to get real close to you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm going to say that you cannot keep giving players these complete no move deals, right? Like you have to legitimately, this is getting terrifying, so I'm gonna move away, but you have to legitimately give yourself some room to make those trades. I like that it's a 15-team no move clause. You basically still have half the league you can trade him to. And I'm a big Brock Nelson fan. I like this signing for Colorado, although we didn't work out that well this season in Colorado. I think give him a whole year in Colorado, and he's going to be a big contributor. But this does bring up the point that I think Necas is gone from Colorado. And, Dan, you seem to think Sam Bennett is worth less than Brock Nelson, which I'm surprised.
Well, just to comment on Brock Nelson trade signing to begin with, I think 7.5 is a little rich for Brock Nelson because he was a great player a couple of years ago. He still is a great player, but he's not a point-per-game player anymore, a little bit older. And I think the reason why he got the $7.5 million was because of that very creative contract of what Chazzy was pointing out. How it's no move clause the first 2 years, and then the third year, last year his contract, you have opportunity to use him as trade bait on trade deadline as a rental player to get some great draft picks and prospects in returns. I think that's why, because I think he's only worth, he made $6 million last year, and I think that's pretty much where he was worth. I know he got injured a little bit, but I think he's probably worth between that 6 and 7 mil. Well, on the high end, I would say more 6. I think he got that extra 1.5 mil per year for getting that modified no move clause and only signing on 3 years. So very good signing from Joe Sakic, very creative. The reason why I say Sam Bennett, I still think it's too early to tell what he's really worth. I mean, he had a great game tonight, for example, getting 2 goals. He made Florida. You take Sam Bennett out of a lineup, Florida's not even competitive against Edmonton tonight, right? So, to me, it really depends how deep Florida goes into the finals and if they win or not. I think Bennett could be worth a lot more money depending how that happens. And the thing is, yeah, Bennett is really hot right now. He's a really good, great player, leading the league in goals.
So hot.
But at the end of the day, he's a second-line center, got 50 points. I don't think a 50-point second-line center is worth $10 million. I think even having him at $7 million is kind of pussy it. Name me another 50-point player that gets $7 million.
With multiple Stanley Cups?
That's the
one Stanley Cup.
That's the, but he's been a huge critical point for Florida getting to the Cup Finals 3 straight years in a row. That's
I get that. But let's face it, before that, he was a 4th-line center in Calgary.
So,
I'm just saying, I don't.
He's not the player he was in Calgary. He's growing.
No, he's not.
I agree that he's worth a lot of money because of what he's done. But I've seen rumors of him saying he's $10 million.
Open market,
whatever 50-point player is getting, that's not a defenseman. That's getting $10 million.
In the open market, a team that is desperate to get over that hump will overpay Sam Bennett. I think Sam Bennett, the max I'd pay him is 8. Seeing Brock Nelson just got 7.5. I think we're seeing the cap for really high-end second-line centers. I'm going to put this up here too. I think this lowers what John Tavares is worth.
Yeah, for sure.
Brock Nelson put up less points than John Tavares. Brock Nelson has got it done in the playoffs in his life where John Tavares has not. So I am looking at that and truthfully right now, if I'm a team and I can pick Sam Bennett or John Tavares, I'm taking Sam Bennett any day of the week.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm taking Brock Nelson over John Tavares any day of the week because he can actually skate.
But let me ask you this, Jacob. I think you should be Brock Nelson's agent. You love him so much. And you think Bennett
I'll be his agent. I'm sure it pays well.
Oh, yeah. And you think Bennett is worth more than Brock Nelson?
No, around the same. Like if Brock Nelson got 7.5 in Colorado, he probably could have got 8 in the open market, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying I think Sam Bennett and Brock Nelson are very comparable guys. They are both guys that are very physical. They can play the wing or center. They have very good playoff history. They seem to step it up in the playoffs every year. They're both, I mean, if anything, in the regular season, actually, statistically, Brock Nelson's a little better than Sam.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
So
Brock Nelson did have 75 points a couple years ago. And you look at that playoff one, like he had 18 points in the Islanders made it to the third round a couple years back. Like he's like, I mean, if you get Brock Nelson fully healthy and you get him producing 70, 80 points as a second line center, he looks like a steal at 7.5.
Which I think he could be. I think Colorado realizes they needed that Nazem Kadri type player.
Right.
And Brock Nelson is not as physical as Nazem Kadri, but he's a pretty physical.
He's up there, yeah.
He's up there, right? And
he can score.
If anything, if Sam Bennett goes to open market, you may, as much as I say I wouldn't pay him any more than 8, Sam Bennett might become more valuable because Brock Nelson is no longer available.
That's true, too.
Because people go on about John Tavares, which I would not put John Tavares and Sam Bennett in the same conversation of type of like archetype for the way they play, right? John Tavares is a faceoff specialist who scores power play goals. Sam Bennett is a playoff warrior who tries to murder you every time he's on the ice, who will also put up 50, 60 points a year. It really just depends on what you're looking for.
Right.
But I do think, though, maybe we set the cap to second line centers at that $7.5 to $8 million. That's probably what they're going to get here. I still think Sam Bennett's going to stay in Florida for around 7. That's kind of where I'm thinking. But at the same time, you know what? You're seeing teams that aren't sure what to do, right? I've already been seeing speculation that some people think the Leafs may be in trouble when Anthony Stolar's contract is up in a year. So teams are looking not just with these contracts, because these players want term on these deals, at least a couple years. You're not just looking at next year. You're looking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. And one thing I did not put in the script, but I do want to mention to you boys that I'm going to call this cap or no cap. For all you old fogies who don't know what that means. If something's cap, that means it is absolutely correct. That means it is like correct. It's good. We agree. No cap. And I just flip those. No cap is when you agree. Cap is when you disagree. So anyways, maybe I'm the old fogey here. I saw the craziest thing on TSN, in my opinion, about the Leafs potentially should retire Mitch Marner's number.
What?
I first thought it was fake until I found it on the TSN website myself. I saw it on Facebook. I'm like, this has got to be someone.
If you're retiring at 16 in Leafland, it's Darcy Tucker, not Mitch Marner.
I won't retire either of them. But I would retire Darcy Tucker before Mitch Marner, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just am curious, by both of your faces, for you who are just listening to on Spotify, they both look like either really confused or they need to go to the bathroom. So, Chazzy, would you wouldn't retire Mitch Marner's number in the Leafs, would you? I know you're more of a Marner fan than both Dan and I are, but you wouldn't put him in that category, would you?
No, you guys will definitely miss him. But he's still playing the game. He's not retired.
No, but they're saying when he retires, could his number be retired as a Maple Leaf?
Well, no, you didn't get anywhere near
that's how I
the championship, or you didn't raise a banner with, like, no one's, like, I don't know. It's like, you know, like in Leafland, and when I was there, it's like Daryl Sittler. So, like, everybody knew who that was, and you were like, I don't know. It's just, is he that big of a player that Leafland is gonna, like, you guys move on quick? So I just don't know if he's that type of player, like a Sundin or a Gilmore or a Wendell Clark. Yeah, Wendell Clark, like to stick around in especially if you didn't win, if you won a cup, forget it. Like he'll eat for free in Toronto for the rest of his life. So
well, I think too, especially Mitch Marner, I think in Toronto he's going to be more hated than loved. I think he'll be remembered as the guy that didn't re-sign, didn't take a contract to be the highest paid player in Leaf history, and refused to be traded at.
And he couldn't have done anything different than what he's doing right now to change that. That's just the way it is playing in Toronto. You leave the fans.
Yeah, but it's not even so much when you leave, because I don't know why people in Leafs Nation didn't get mad at Matt Sundin when he refused to be traded and then signed to the team that Toronto tried to trade him to. Which Matt Sundin seems to just be an untouchable person in Leafland, at least to a lot of people. Not to me.
I just think there was a lot of hype on your core four and just so much
never got it done,
on that, like short fuses of. Like now you see Colorado. Look at are they now another team to beat next year for? I don't know.
You don't know personally. I think Colorado. You're almost talking the same conversation you have with the Leafs. You have a couple back-to-back playoff failures with guys like Nathan McKinnon and not Rantanen anymore, but like they have a lot of really. You have McKinnon and Cale Makar. When you have those two guys plus some decent depth pieces and like Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle and you had Taves on the back end and you had some good goaltending. I think it was a failure for them too, right? So I don't think your number should be hung in the rafters just because you put up some points. I think that's cute. No. But I don't think that gives you a retired number. But we need to retire for the morning. But before we do,
we're going to run out of numbers. No players are going to have numbers.
Oh, my God.
Like Roman numerals.
I don't know. Number 4. Actually, no, it can't be. So that's Bobby Orr. But
letter A just scored. Letter C just scored.
The only way I can see retiring someone like Mitch Marner is, let's say, a new team like Utah, for example, had a player like that, and they retired him. Like kind of like what Vince Carter did in Toronto. I get Vince Carter winning a championship in Toronto, but Toronto in sports is a newer franchise, and you got to retire somebody eventually, right?
And also, too, Vince Carter, like him or lump him, did take the Raptors on multiple deep playoff runs where Mitch Marner never really did. But
then he changed the game.
So back to you. Like, why haven't you put Curtis Joseph's number in the rafters?
Well, actually, that is a huge argument I've made for a very long time. I mean, no, like seriously though, name me a better goalie in the 2000s era we've had than Curtis Joseph.
Yeah, exactly.
No, like seriously, name me a bit. And if you say Ed Belfour, I'm literally just going to turn off the computer. The whole podcast will be deleted. Exactly. You can't think of a better goalie the Leafs have actually. Never mind, even the 2000s. The last goalie that you would say is maybe comparable to Cujo would have been Felix Potvin. And Potvin ended his time in Toronto terribly.
He did, yeah.
And then before that, Alan Bester. He was my favorite. Little Alan.
Oh, Bester. I forgot about him. Yeah,
Alan Bester. Yeah.
Just don't forget about Dre. But Dan, your Island mindset is something a little bit different this week. And you want to talk about a really special hockey tournament in Barrie, Ontario. Talk about grassroots sports. Well, here you go.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to be there, but unfortunately I got some meetings set up for tomorrow during the days. I can't be there. So luckily Chazzy, the CEO, is going to try and make it there and get some videos and pictures and stuff. But 20 years ago, we're going back really far now, my grade 10 business project, it took business because I love business, and we all had to come up with a concept to make a profit. So there was a little like flea market in the cafeteria for a week, and people were selling arts and crafts and cupcakes and little different things like that. And you had to make a budget and figure out how much these things would spend to make and how much you could sell it for, how much profit you can make, how many hours you gotta put in, how much you gotta pay yourself, yada yada yada. I didn't want to make cupcakes, so I got a little creative. I started a ball hockey tournament with a classmate of mine. And I do have cerebral palsy, actually. So that's why I talk the way I do. So back in high school, I was always put in the special ed class. And another high school, a rivalry high school to us, had a special needs ball hockey tournament. So I played in that tournament, obviously, because I liked hockey. And then I started an after-school hockey program for the high school that I went to, St. Joan of Arc. And I wished that my line mates from the hockey that I started could play in the tournament that I played in. So my idea for my business project was to have an inclusion hockey tournament where every player with a disability can invite a friend with them to play with them, not just cheer, but play with them on the not the rink, but the field, well, not the field, but parking lot, whatever, can play with them that did not have a disability. So it was a huge success. We ended up making a lot of money for the school. Of course, I had to plan out the day and plan out how much each player is to pay and get sponsors and get prizes and food. And it was a lot of work. And my high school teacher found our Streaker Island podcast and started listening to us. And he messaged me saying, "Hey, tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of the tournament that you started 20 years ago." I'm like, wow, that's really, really amazing. So, I wish I knew a little sooner. I would have loved to be there. Hopefully we can work something out with Streakers and everything next year. It'll be a cool way for the 21st anniversary. I don't know if they still do an inclusion tournament or if it's a just special needs only tournament. I don't know how exactly they do it nowadays, but nevertheless, it was a grade 10 business project that started off and now 20 years strong and is called for Knights Cup. So I was really honored and excited and brought back some interesting memories and can't wait to see what happens tomorrow. So that was the mindset. That's, start off regardless how small a project may seem at the time. If it's good enough, you can build it to any legacy that you want, even 20 years later.
And I also think, Dan, it brings up a great point. And yes, a round of applause to Mr. Moore for your money. It's incredible what you were able to do with a tournament. And also just inclusion is so powerful, right? Like, I mean, differently abled isn't a bad thing, right? And that's something I want to harp on as well. Like, Dan, you mentioned about your cerebral palsy. I have dyslexia, so letters and numbers all do the flip-flop, flippity-floppity, floppity-flip. But, like, that doesn't mean that I can't do something, or it doesn't mean that Dan can't do something because he has cerebral palsy. And Chazzy's just good looking. So, I mean, we look at that and you know what? It's one of those things that I think it was a great opportunity. I remember I played in the tournament as well, and people were shocked to see, you know, what the amount of skill and what these kids were able to do. So kind of remember, it's a big thing too about not judging a book by its cover. Like one of my favorite cover books, The Circus Book by Dr. Seuss. Not saying the Knights Cup was a circus. It's an incredible tournament ran by an incredible group of people and an incredible school at St. Joan of Arc High School in Barrie. So it is definitely worth your support. But thank you very much, everyone, for watching the Streakers Island podcast. Looking for more Streakers Island content? You know what you do. You got to follow the social medias right away. Do it now. Go, go, go. I'm Jacob Moore, the Supplecating Sports Analyst, who's telling you to download the Streakers app. Best lap of your life. Better than a fresh pot of coffee when you're half asleep in the morning. It's just the best thing ever. We're also joined by Mr. More for your money.
Woo!
And the one, the only, the good-looking homie, Chazzy, the CEO. Until next time, we'll see you later today. Hopefully you don't get sick of us.
Bye-bye.